I ended up paying him back. It took me about 2 months. But speaking of money, you know, do whatever you can for him, and it'll reciprocate, I'm sure. If nothing else, it'll reciprocate with our efforts, and it will show at the bottom line that we are making a difference. I just want to mention the one thing I've left out of my lecture. As a result of me taking Sally in and us notifying officials, I did a memo, and we notified every federal law enforcement agency in the country. We found out later that the leaders of the terrorist cell that she identified were arrested. I'm sure that we prevented a terrorist attack from occurring in Los Angeles. So we can credit Sally for saving probably thousands of American lives. And the reason that this did happen is because of Rod McDougall, who brought her to me, and the information that we were able to disseminate. But I just wanted to add that to it.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you very much for all the great work that you do. Folks, we like to support all these great individuals who do the great works that they do, that come to these events, folks, because, you know, they're the ones that are already taking a, you know, front row seat, you know, taking the bullets first, you know, if they come after us, you know. So, is the camera ready to go? Okay, all right. Our next speaker is a businesswoman who was just doing her own life and going along like the rest of us, and was invited to go to a United Nations event. And after attending that, she realized that, you know, these events are not just about some, you know, business. They're about some real big business of money, power, politics, and establishing a world government dictatorship. And the more she attended on these events, the more she became enraged that what the super rich of the world are trying to do. I'm talking about kings and queens and presidents and prime ministers. And she dedicated her life to finding out what's going on at the international level and reporting to American people and the people of the world, really, what's really happening so that we can take action and to stop that and restore our freedoms. Please help me give him the warm hand of welcome to a fireball of a lady, Joan Veon.
All I have to say is from one fireball to another. I would like to thank you, Payman, for inviting me to speak here. I have enjoyed myself. I have learned a great deal from some of you others who are researching and investigating other facets, other areas. You know, we all have our own part, our own patch in the garden. Now, the one thing I did understand and I did recognize is that Payman opened the conversation, the conference, with a woman, and he's closing with a woman. Isn't that great? And I want you to know that if this was a United Nations conference, all of the lesbians and the liberal left radical feminists would be ragging because there's only 2 female speakers given all the male speakers. I don't feel that way. I love men. It's okay? It's okay. I am Italian descent. Okay? It's all right? I love men. So, you know, I'm glad us ladies are in the minority. And I'm glad to see you men, because every time I go to a global meeting, there's a couple of us who meet from all over the world, and we're saying, where are the men? So, men, I'm glad to see you. Thank you. With that, I would like to say that what we're going to be discussing today is really where I have been and what I have seen, what I have been able to research. As I said last evening, I had absolutely no idea that I would be covering 80 global meetings. I mean, that's a whole lot. And I have learned a lot. I have seen a lot. I have cried a lot. It is a very lonely thing. It is a very lonely thing to understand truth. But I believe that God gives to them who have the capacity to handle truth the ability to know, recognize, and discern what is truth. So with that, I would like to talk a little bit about where I have been. Because of the time element, I'm not going to be able to do any in-depth lecturing or tell you funny stories, because believe me, I could tell you a whole lot. These guys, as many have said, they're like roaches. They just flee. They have absolutely no backbone of their own because, you see, long ago, what world government wants are malleable people who can be molded for evil. I have written 2 books. The first one is Prince Charles, the Sustainable Prince. It is true. I thought I was going to marry the prince when I was 8 years old. I wasn't real worried about his big ears because I think they were sort of pinned back. They just got bigger as he grew. And so I was quite shocked to see Prince Charles and to discover his role behind the scenes. My book, Prince Charles, the Sustainable Prince, talks about that hidden role of the prince. It was the first book to define, to discuss, to explain what sustainable development means coming out of the 1992 Rio Earth Summit and Agenda 21. It was the first book to explain public-private partnerships, which others and myself call global corporate fascism. My second book is called The United Nations Global Straitjacket. In this book, it's an overview of the world governmental structure. Today, we're going to look just briefly at the political side of world government. We're going to go into, in depth, the economics, because I figured you all were mature enough and smart enough to handle what I have been weeding through for the last 12 years. I also talk again in more depth about public-private partnership and Bill Clinton's reinventing government, because that's what it is, a sale of all government assets. And then, of course, the economic, the legal, and the philosophy of what we all know. I have titled this speech, Understanding the Power Structure and Players of World Government in the 21st Century. What I would like for you to know is what I think is true, and that is we are not, world government is not coming. It's not out there somewhere. It's here. It's been here. And what we are now able to see is the structure. As far as seeing the structure, believe me, I have spent a lot of time piecing pieces together. I have read at least, 10, 12,000 pages of their documents. I have them. Now, this was the situation, the state of the world, the nation state before 1945. These circles all represent various walls that protected, that created the individual nation state that our forefathers fought for. And over a period of time, the various barriers came down. The economic barriers came down in 1944 with the birth of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. A little bit later on, we're going to talk about the 1980 Monetary Deregulation Act. The political barriers came down with the creation of the United Nations in 1945. So every time they took a barrier down, they created an international structure. And that international structure, over the years since it has been birthed, has been ceded more and more and more power. How in the world could we get into this predicament at this point in time? It is because in order to get to the local level, you have to go through the federal level. And it is no secret that our federal government has facilitated, pushed, shoved, orchestrated, used whatever tactic was necessary, whenever, to deceive the American people and to make us believe that if they created the United Nations, that it would be a place where governments could come and talk over their differences. Their website, if you have not been there, is www.un.org. If you've not been there, if you've not gone through it or gotten lost 12 times trying to figure out the maze, I suggest it's time you go there. Because you will see that over the years, the United Nations has become basically a global structure of world government. What do you need to facilitate world government? You need trade. In 1994, then there was the international financial architecture. We're not going to have time to go into this. I'm just going to mention it right now. But as things were progressing between 1995 and 2005, the G7 finance ministers and other peoples worked on a set of rules and regulations to combine the world financially. This is what I have been studying, as well as other facets of this. Then there was the legal and judicial barriers that fell with the creation of the International Criminal Court. That meeting was held in Rome, and I was there in 1998. And I'll tell you what, I had chills go through my body as they called for a non-count vote, or a vote where you don't have to tell how each country voted. And to know that for the first time since the Roman Empire, that there was an international court that is designed to arrest those people who they deem as potential international terrorists or who have committed 3 specific crimes at this point, but in the future they will add more. And then there was September 11th. Now let's take a look at all the barriers that had fallen before September 11th. Basically, all the major barriers had fallen. And the last barrier to fall was the most sensitive and the most serious. And that was the intelligence and the military. And I appreciate all the people that we've had here, especially the awesome testimony of Willie Rodriguez, and to understand what they knew, they saw, they experienced, as well as the other people who have done research on September 11th. I did my own. And on my website, womensgroup.org, I have 70 pages of abstracts. And I just took these abstracts from all the different newspapers available. And I did not want to conclude that it was an inside job. But I was forced to. And in so doing, in looking at these abstracts, I realized that what it was designed to do was take down and merge the CIA, the FBI, the KGB, all of the intelligence entities around the world, as well as the military. And so, of course, we have the Coalition of the Willing. A previous speaker talked about the Jones Act and the ability that our government now wants to bring foreign shipping companies and vessels into the country. To my knowledge, that was first violated with New Orleans. The excuse being given that we needed foreign vessels to come in because American vessels were all in a mess down there. Along with the Jones Act, and this is something that I'm not going to be specifically talking about, but I have a number of newsletters over there that I write that document a lot of research on about everything I'm talking about, as well as my books. There is something else called open skies. And our government has been signing major agreements with countries all over the world to tear down the barriers from an airline point of view so that foreign airlines, once they sign the Open Skies Agreement, can fly anywhere in the world without previous clearance. Our government, Bush, is working very, very hard at this point to get a major Open Skies Agreement signed between the United States and the EU by October of this year. And I can tell you, working in the investment field, that I am seeing a lot of activity in airline stocks that lead me to believe that this is going to go down, meaning it's going to go through. So the barriers are down. What do we have? All right? we have a world without borders, a world in which they started using the phrase in about 1995, integrated and interdependent. Let me show you a flow chart of the major actors, and we're not going to have time to go through all of these, and I really hope you can see this. And I know I have a little... Which way? This way? It's all right. The bottom line is, let's take a look. The top level is always money. The Bank for International Settlements, many of you know as the central bank. It's not a central bank. It's the apex of power, which Carol Quigley designed it to be, or said it would be, started in 1929, 1930, and that is where all the central banks of the world meet. Next to it, on either side, one is like a United Nations of stock exchanges. It's called the International Organization of Security Commissions. And on the other side, it's called the International Association of Insurance Supervisors. So actually, they are all in bed together. The international bankers, the insurance companies of the world, and the stock exchanges of the world. Underneath that, you have the Group of Eight. You then have a number of non-governmental organizations, such as the International Chamber of Commerce, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, the World Economic Forum, the Prince of Wales, POW. Princess Diana said that she was a prisoner of Wales, but in any event, I use it, POW. The Prince of Wales International Business Leaders Forum. And then there are major groups and organizations called the Royal Institute for International Affairs, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderbergers, and the Council for Foreign Relations. Then you have the United Nations and a number of organs underneath the United Nations. So, what we are going to do is only talk very briefly about the United Nations and the Group of Eight and the World Trade Organization. Many of you are very familiar with the United Nations. You know, when Aldrich Hiss, who was a Soviet spy, is the first Secretary General and the organizing Secretary General of this organization, that sort of shows us really the true nature of the United Nations. It's based on the Russian Constitution. You all know the difference between the U.S. Constitution and the UN Charter. The difference is, under our constitutions, our right comes from God. Our liberties, our freedoms cannot be taken away. They cannot be numbered. And we can say what we want, freedom of speech, without being threatened with a change of behavior or a loss of our citizenship. Not so under the United Nations Charter. They come from government, they can be taken away, and basically it is a feudalistic form of government. And that's really what we have. We have an organization that is helping us with communism. But what does the United Nations have that makes it a government? It has a head of state, the Secretary General, a governing body, the General Assembly, and I can tell you I have a couple of newsletters talking about the reform of the United Nations and the powers being given not only in 2000, but now in 2005 and in 2006. There is a new report by Mitchell and Gingrich, bipartisanship at the finest, on how to further reform the United Nations. They don't say get rid of it. They say, oh, it just needs to be refined. They have their own currency. It's called the special drawing right. Now, I want you to remember that because we're going to see it as we go through the new economic structure of the world. It has its own treasury system, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, its own legal system with the World Court and the International Criminal Court, and its own policing mechanism with peacekeeping troops. Furthermore, it has its own oath of allegiance and its own charter. They are in the process of setting up and facilitating a global tax and a global currency. When you go into the United Nations General Assembly, and believe it or not, I have sat there with other major groups and organizations, well, UN meetings, of course, that have met there because really it's a world parliament. Now, you all know that every country gets one vote. So whether or not you have 50 million people or 5,000 people, you have the same vote. It's not on population or size. So America is equal to Andorra or Cuba or Guyana. However, that's not really very true. The Commonwealth, the British Commonwealth, is allowed to operate inside the United Nations. And I stumbled upon this, and I have a newsletter about the power of the British Commonwealth, because I almost flipped out when I saw what is really happening at the United Nations level. Did you know that the Commonwealth has 54 countries, and they are allowed to operate not only inside the United Nations, but outside through the Commonwealth, which is headed up by none other than the British royal family. Now, here is that same chart of actors that I showed you earlier. Let's take a look at those numbers. So when we talk about the Bank for International Settlements, there are 38 members of the Commonwealth that are also members of the Bank for International Settlements that are also members of the United Nations. What does that mean? It means that at the Bank for International Settlements, the Commonwealth has the potential. I say the potential. I can't prove it. I don't have time to prove it. Of 38 votes versus America's 1 vote. At the Group of 8, they have 2 votes. Canada and Britain, they have 2 votes to our 1 vote. At the United Nations, they have 54 potential votes to our 1 vote. The IMF, 45. The WTO, 46. The World Bank, 44. What am I saying? Is this not brilliant? The Brits did it again. Good old Andrew Jackson did rout them out of New Orleans. But they came in a different way by creating an international level. Now, let's take a look at the 2 down at the bottom. They are looking to expand the Group of 8 right now to 20, which would include some of the developing countries of the world. Well, if they do that, then there will be 5 votes for the British Commonwealth. And within our own free trade zone, we will be outvoted 13-1. Brits thought it was terrific. They started theirs in 1694, the Bank of France in 1803, and the latest, can you imagine, was the Bank of Iraq. My goodness, what you do is take over every country doesn't have a central bank. So, with that, the Bank of England in England, it was started by William Patterson, and I got this from the Bank of England museum, and it was interesting because it said just this. The Bank of England was birthed in 1694 when William Patterson proposed raising 1.2 million British pounds to be lent to the government on the condition that its subscribers were incorporated as a stock company. Now, there is a video that Edward Wessex put out, who is the Queen's youngest son, Prince Edward, and it's part of his Crown and Country series number 3. And here he is trying to explain, having never had to worry about what money really is, about what money is by taking some pounds from an ATM machine. So I just thought it was pretty interesting, so I'm sharing it with you because he's telling us that what William Patterson proposed to do was set up this bank that would be a bank for perpetual interest. And then he has no dithers to explain that his forefather, King William II, was the largest investor with 10,000 pounds. Now, that was a tremendous amount of money. You know, when I started understanding the global economics, I thought, I bet you the British are part of the central banking system of the world. But I didn't have any way to really prove it until I saw this video. Here is the actual document. God bless you, Prince Edward. I appreciate it. And there it is, the sum of 10,000 pounds. So, we went from, as you know, from gold to notes, to paper. As you know, every central bank has their own paper, and we have ours, the Federal Reserve. And I'm just going to breeze through this. You all know how it started by treachery and treason in 1913. But what I have seen in the last several years, during the 90s, you may not know that many of the major central banks around the world, the Bank of England, the Bank of Japan, the Bank of France, they all harmonized the rules and the regulations and the freedoms that they have to conform to the U.S. Federal Reserve. In other words, all the central banks have been harmonizing their powers so that they all can set interest rates independent of government. They can intervene in foreign exchange markets, and they can, as you know, set inflation and monetary targets. The Bank for International Settlements, as I mentioned earlier, Carol Quigley said it was to be the apex of financial capitalism. Here it is. Just take a look at that. All the banks, all the countries of the world have a central bank. There is no monetary freedom anywhere unless we go to Iran right now. You know? So who rules the world? These are the men who rule the world. This is a picture of before, of course, Alan Greenspan retired. This is a picture of these wonderful people. And you can all pick Alan Greenspan out. But these are the central bank ministers. They meet with the G7 finance ministers. This started as a result of the Asian crises. Before that, the central bank ministers were not part of the G8 process or in meeting with the central bank ministers, with the G7 finance ministers. So now they meet in tandem. Oh, yes. Notice their tie. They all have the same color tie. It's all the same tie. Isn't this cute? It is engraved with the euro, the yen, the dollar, and the gold sign. Doesn't that warm your heart? The Group of Eight. Who are the Group of Eight? Many people do not know that the Group of Eight come out of the United Nations. They are the top 8 industrialized countries of the world. The United States, Canada, Germany, Japan, Italy, France, Great Britain, and Russia was the last to be invited to join. For the first time this year, the Group of 8 meeting will be in St. Petersburg, Russia. The U.S. has said at this moment that they are thinking of boycotting. I'm not going because I'm not going alone, that's for sure. But when did the Group of 8 start? They started when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. He closed the gold window August 15, 1971. So what is the purpose of the Group of 8? They were birthed out of chaos. They became the designers of world government. Since 1975, they have facilitated the process of globalization, which is tearing down the barriers between the nation states. They have acted as a global board of directors. They initially got together because of economic reasons, but now they handle all, whether it is political, whether it's transportation, whether it is health, whether it is Social Security, retirement, whatever. They're into everything. So what do you see here? Yeah, I see a giant octopus. They have facilitated the entry of corporations as partners helping governments, called public-private partnership. They support all the UN goals, and they sanctioned several years ago in the United States here, they announced a global army for the United Nations of 85,000 troops. Now, last year in Scotland, where the G8 met in the British Isles there, this was the first time the Queen ever gave a dinner, considering they've met several times in England before. But this was the first time the Queen gave a dinner. Now, I want to see if you are as smart as I think you are. Just take a look at that picture. You've got the Queen sitting there. She's got a white dress on with a little bit of red and green. And we have the Knights of the Round Table there, right? So what did the Queen tell her knights? I decided in a major press briefing, the closing press briefing with Tony Blair, that I would ask him. And he was sort of startled at my question because everybody was hammering him on global warming. And here I come from the left, left wing, right wing, whatever, and ask him, Mr. Prime Minister, could you tell us what the Queen told the G8 leaders at dinner? He told me he couldn't, that they make it a rule that they never talk about it. Well, not to be deterred, I figured Jacques Chirac would tell me. So I went in to talk to Jacques Chirac and ask him. He couldn't tell me either. So, who do you think has the power? These are the top 8 world leaders, and they can't say what the Queen told them? If Blair was really smart, because I've got a big mouth, he would have said, well, you know, she's really concerned about the poor because we have so many in Africa. Those are the former colonies that they decolonized. And every time Britain spun off a colony and they got their freedom, they also got a vote at the United Nations. Ah, brilliant. Just brilliant. We're going to move on to international organizations. We're going to talk about regionalism, the World Trade Organization, trading zones, and domestically what it means here in the United States. I talked for a moment ago about the World Trade Organization in 1994. It was part of the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs. It was finally signed after a lot of delay from its original inception in 1944 when Congress would not approve it to 1994, and it grew to over 27,000 pages. Now, you all are real smart folk. You want to trade with someone, you're not going to sign a 27,000-page document, are you? I didn't think so. All right? Somehow, oh, yeah, it's free trade, excuse me. All right? Tore all the barriers down between the nation states. But what else did it do? It gave a global structure with a court. So if we don't do what they mandate us, hey, this is better than the mafia. It's not all sort of legal, and power to fine countries. And it's the first time, this is very important. There was a time when you and I, as business people, farmers, manufacturers, whatever, we only competed with the guy around the corner or across the state. Now we all compete in a giant fishbowl. There are 16 areas of integration, and I have there financial services. I don't have time to talk about it, but if you really, really want to know what happened in Asia, it wasn't the fact that their currencies just fell. Those countries, those 5 countries, refused to sign the World Trade Organization Financial Services Agreement, which said, please let in Goldman Sachs and Merrill Lynch and Morgan Stanley, because we want to buy out your banks, your insurance companies, and your brokerage firms. That's what happened in the Asian crises. All right? So we've erased all the trade barriers along with the financial and the economic. So what do we need? We need a system to manage. That's where regional comes in with trading zones. Here we go. And this is the regional trading zone system as proposed. The Americas or the European Common Market, the Middle East, South Africa, which Clinton started, and Asia. We don't have time to go into all of this, but I will also mention pay close attention to the new special ties between the United States and the UK called the Transatlantic Partnership. Andrew Jackson would be, excuse my French, damn mad. So what do we have? We have our hemisphere with the dollar, Europe with the euro, and most recently in the Bank for International Settlements document, they basically started linking the yen with the renminbi. That's never been. In all previous documents that I have read at the Bank for International Settlements, it's only been the yen. Now do you see, okay, the influence from China. So we all know what's been going up and what's been going down. We all know what's been going down, don't we? So, trading blocks, the free trade areas of the Americas. The U.S. is now joined. Now, excuse me, for those people who are fighting FTAA, God bless you, but you're about 10 years too late, darling. Yeah, you are. The U.S. is now joined with the other 33 countries of this hemisphere, politically and economically, whether you like it or not. It was started in 1994. This will be equal to the European Union, and it's all about controlling you and me. Lastly, when I was at the second free trade areas of the Americas in, I think, 1994, 1997, I think, maybe 1998, I was in Chile. I found a document that is published by the Socialist International. And I couldn't believe it because it parallels what the Socialist International was recommending to what the document for the free trade areas of the Americas had in it. So we have NAFTA, started in 1994. They're just breaking us in easy because would the American people ever go for this? No way. So NAFTA, the first 3. You know, Canada, U.S., and Mexico in 1994. CAFTA last year. Central America, and then how will they do the rest of those countries? one by one. Oh, it says I have 5 minutes left. We're going to breeze through Nixon and power to the people with him and how he divided the country up into 10 regions. All right? Lenin said this. Divide the world into regional groups as a transition stage to world government. Populations will more readily abandon their national loyalties to a vague regional loyalty than they will for a world authority. Later, the regions can be brought all the way into a single dictatorship. Okay, key organizations. I got this from a book called The Gaia Peace Atlas. This was New Models of Governance. It's signed by Maurice Strong because I had him sign it. And this is now who is going to run the world. And we are just going to swing through some of these pictures here. The Royal Institute, the Council of Foreign Relations, the Bilderbergers, the Trilateral, few people that you know. The World Economic Forum is a place where I've gone for the last 8 years. It's very, very powerful. It brings together many, it was organized in 1970. It's an NGO with UNESCO. It brings together all the actors of global governance, the CEOs, UN leaders, world leaders, religious and academia, and NGOs. It supports the UN agenda. And it also has world leaders like Condoleezza Rice, who occasionally come when they can't come. It has CEOs. Bill Gates is always there, a nice member of the CFR. It fosters public-private partnership, which is global corporate fascism. It has an inner circle of people, and I've got a CD over there, and I've got several newsletters that talk about the inner core people. This past year, there were 26 Bilderbergers, but of course they don't put it on their bio, so I had to do a little research. The Secretary General of the Bilderbergs was there for the first time, 70 members of the Council for Foreign Relations, 5 members of the Royal Institute for International Affairs, people from the Aspen Institute, the Club of Rome. Bill Clinton they love him there. He gets standing ovations just for stepping up on the podium. And there are others. They have started in the last couple years, instead of just having little workshops, to using it as an opportunity to put change agents to use envisioning to change the thinking of the CEOs. So there you have 2 that you would know, Larry Summers and Laura Tyson. They also have facilitators, and they get together. I took these photos, by the way. And they get together with, to talk over the issues and how they're going to change the world. Why? They want control of the world. And how? They're going to put new structures in place and new rules of the road. First, destroy the value of money, adopt an economic philosophy, create a market-led world, and erase nation-specific laws. How do you destroy the value of money? We all know what Nixon did and how now it's just fiat money. 2, adopt an economic philosophy of control. What do you imagine it is? It is capitalism. I wrote a paper over there called Pac-Man Capitalism. Why? It is an ism, like socialism, communism, fascism. It is an ism. It is a form of control. So let's talk about what capitalism needs. It always needs new markets. It needs new products. And it needs new customers all the time. Otherwise, it is going to fall. Yeah, along with a lot of money. Okay? I call this Pac-Man capitalism. You just eat up your opponent, right? Exactly what capitalism is. Joseph Schumpeter, who was an economist and taught at Harvard, said, the essential point to grasp is that in dealing with capitalism, we are dealing with an evolutionary process. Capitalism then is by nature a form or method of economic change, and not only never is, but can never be stationary. What does that really mean? Yeah, Pac-Man. In other words, in order to keep capitalism from falling, if you have to create war, so be it. What do you think New Orleans is? Third, create a market-led world. And I want you to pay real close attention to this area, because I'm not as smart as you might think I am. And it took me a whole lot to figure this out. Okay? So just do me a favor and listen, because, you're doing me a favor because I'm not that smart. Okay? All right? First, we're going to take a look at 4 things. The 1980 Monetary Deregulation Act, the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act, quickly the IMF World Bank, and a shift from Keynesian economics. The 1980 Monetary Deregulation Act opened our borders for investing. It eliminated interest ceilings by banks. And let me just mention, when it was passed, they jacked up interest rates to 22%, so on our money market funds, we could say, wow, this is a great thing. Now they have us where they want us, and so we're going to get 0.5% on our savings and 21% on our credit card. Got it? But it also opened up the world because all the other G7 countries were passing something very similar to this at the same time. So that now, on a daily basis, $1.9 trillion runs around the world looking for the highest play and the quickest return. You know those little third world countries that are complaining about how they're being raped, robbed, and pillaged by hot money? Duh. Second, repeal the Glass-Steagall Act. The Glass-Steagall Act was passed in 1933 to put firewalls between the whole entire system, where you would then have commercial banking here and investment banking over here. They did that in 1999 in order to allow foreign banks, insurance companies, and brokerage firms to come into America and buy up our banks, insurance companies, and brokerage firms, so that at some point in the future, you will only have the top 10 international banks, insurance companies, and brokerage firms operating globally. The Bretton Woods institutions, we're going to fly. You know about these evil people who set it up. Okay? What I want you to see is that in 1967, the IMF created its own currency, the special drawing right. What is the special drawing right? It is a basket of currencies, 5 currencies, the dollar, the yen, the British pound sterling, the Swiss franc, and now the euro. Okay? It also adopted guidelines, because, Nixon, took us off the gold standard, to manage a floating exchange rate system. The World Bank has been going around to third world bond markets so that you can buy McDonald's in French francs. All right? We have seen, because of the Monetary Control Act, that there's been a huge increase in foreign activity with regard to buying in the United States and us buying outside. Now, what is the importance of the market-led, market-based democracy? Snow said this, and this is when I started researching it. He said, quote, "We recognize that we are so interdependent that growth in Asia is important to us, and our growth is important to Japan, and Japan's growth is so important to Euro nations and so on, that we are all interconnected in ways that one nation's growth feeds and assists in other parts of the globe." And I'm sitting in the audience and I'm going, oh my goodness, I got it. He then went on to say, the market is central to growth. The value of the dollar is to be determined by the market and not the strength or policy of government. I thought I was going to have cardiac arrest. Now, let's take a look at market-based democracy. You have government and you have business, 2 separate entities. You had John Maynard Keynes. Keynes said, hey, in 1933, Roosevelt, you'd be real smart if you just started to spend money you don't have and create a deficit, and that'll get you out of, the Great Depression. Oh, what a great plan. Don't you wish we could do that? So, what do we have from 1933 to whether you want to start 1995 or 2005? All levels of government are broke. Local, county, state, federal government. They are all broke. Guess what? Business is where the power is. They make jobs and they have money. Then came Ludwig von Hayek. And he said, hey, you know what you need to do? You need to have smaller government, privatization, sell state-owned assets. Isn't that great? You bankrupt them, and then you get them to sell all their assets. Where are you going to put them? You're going to put them in the market, because that's exactly what was adopted by Thatcher. And then Reagan said, What a great idea! Thank you, Ronald Reagan. Get government off our backs. That's right. Where did it go? It went into the stock market. What is the stock market? Here is the market. Andrew Jackson, don't I wish? Andrew Crockett from the Bank for International Settlements said, advances in information technology, in other words, the computer, has created the transformation from government-controlled financial system to a market-led global financial system. He said that in 2002. So yours truly is busy piecing together all these little pieces. Here's the puzzle piece. The market has stocks. If it's a foreign stock, it's a ADR, bonds, corporate bonds, treasuries, mortgages, auto loans, credit card paper. I'm coming. Mutual funds, derivatives, commodities, futures, and the currency from all countries. It's going where? In the market. The new world order is that the market will determine everything. It's all going in there. The kitchen sink. How do you transfer wealth? You skim off the top. How are you going to do that? You have market adjustments. And guess what? It's all facilitated by the central bank. So, he who owns the most shares wins. Now, let's talk about a global stock exchange. I did that in my book, United Nations Global Straitjacket. In the last 10 years, guess what? All the various foreign stock exchanges have gone public. They are listed on their stock exchange. So, we not only have currencies, but now we have the stock exchanges of the world going public. And there has been a consolidation. The Nordic exchange now has only, took all the Nordic countries, they have one exchange. The Euro next is for the European Union. There's just one exchange. Last week, the New York Stock Exchange went public for the first time in 213 years. The London Stock Exchange is public. And so we have this little interview with John Thane here, and he says U.S. exchanges, which are following their European rivals to become publicly traded companies, have said that they are interested in transatlantic alliances. The New York Stock Exchange expects to be involved in takeovers, including in Europe, and after completing its transformation into a public company. All right? This is the global stock exchange. It's going to be, like I said, Pac-Man capitalism. There are many things that the stock exchange needs that has been set in place. I'm going to swing through these. But what does it need to facilitate commerce? It needs a global currency. Interestingly enough, between 1999 and 2001, 97% of all debt is in 5 currencies. This is a picture I took of former Federal Reserve Chairman Paul Volcker and Gerald Corrigan at a meeting in which I asked Paul Volcker what he saw for the future, if he saw what he saw. And he said, well, for the long term, but it's a long way off, if we're going to be successful in a globalized world, we should have an international currency. I said, like the SDR. He said, no, it would be more than that. That was in 2004. In 2005, the Bank for International Settlement said, we got problems, we have all these economic imbalances, and perhaps we need an international currency or perhaps moving to regional trading blocks such as the dollar, the euro, the renminbi. I asked the managing director last year if he could talk about the move to an international currency or a regional currency. He said, the question you ask is not an easy one about regional currencies, but I think it's a long-term consideration. Just in this past January, the chief economist who I interview all the time talked about the fact that we've got problems, we have all these global imbalances, and maybe we need either a gold standard or a single international currency or regional currency trading blocks. I think the answer will be we are going to go back to the special drawing. We're going to go to the special drawing right because the UN is on it. The Bank for International Settlements just changed a year ago to the Bank for International Settlements to the special drawing right. So we have the UN, the IMF, and now the Bank for International Settlements on the special drawing rights. That we have them now telling us that there's terrible global economic imbalances, and the only answer is a regional currency, international currency, which will be, in my opinion, a special drawing right. Okay, bottom line. How do we handle this? It's been difficult. And it is difficult. And I want to read to you what Isaiah says. Behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket, and are counted as small dust. Have you not known? It is he that sits on the circle of the earth. Have you not known? Have you not heard that the everlasting God, the Lord, the Creator of the ends of the earth, does not faint, neither is weary?